Are you okay?
There's something I need to talk to you about.
People love to say marriage changes people. I used to roll my eyes whenever I heard that, because if marriage was supposed to reveal surprises, then I thought I was safe. I had done my homework. 6 solid years. That's how long Daniel and I dated. 6 years of birthdays, funerals, money problems, career stress, long conversations, and awkward family gatherings. 6 years of thinking, at least I know what I'm walking into. So when I stood at the altar that morning, smiling until my face hurt, dressed in white, holding his hands, I truly believed the hardest part was over. I didn't know the real test hadn't even started. The wedding was simple but beautiful. The kind of wedding where people nod approvingly and whisper, "This one will last." I cried that morning, happy tears, relief tears, the kind that come from finally feeling settled. The first 2 days after the wedding felt unreal. Room service, late mornings, laughing over nothing. That soft newlywed silence where even scrolling your phones together feels romantic. On the third day, we moved into our apartment. I decorated it carefully. Curtains, cushions, little details that made it feel like ours. I wanted warmth. I wanted a home that felt like we were building it together, brick by brick. Then came day 5. Day 5 was when my marriage cleared its throat and said, "Let's be honest." That morning, Daniel barely touched his breakfast. Normally, he'd joke or complain about traffic. This time, he just stared at his plate like the food had offended him. "Are you okay?" I asked. He sighed, that heavy sigh people give when they've already made a decision but want to pretend they're still considering your feelings. "There's something I need to talk to you about." My heart skipped. Not because I suspected cheating or bad news, but because women know that sentence rarely leads anywhere good. "What is it?" I asked gently. He rubbed his palms together. "I've been thinking my mom should come stay with us." I blinked. I actually laughed, not because it was funny, but because my brain assumed it had to be a joke. "Stay with us how?" I asked. "Move in," he said casually, like he was talking about buying bread. Move in. 5 days after our wedding. I waited for him to smile. He didn't. I tried to explain calmly. I told him I didn't hate his mother. I said she could visit, stay for a while, come often, but permanently, just like that? "We just got married," I said. "This is when we're supposed to learn each other, adjust, make mistakes privately." His expression changed. That was the first time I saw it. That shift, like a switch quietly flipped behind his eyes. "So, you are saying my mother isn't welcome in my house?" The word house landed heavier than it should have. "No," I said quickly. "That's not what I'm saying." But he wasn't listening anymore. That was the moment love stopped speaking softly. Something settled in my chest then, a feeling I didn't yet have language for. All I knew was this: the marriage we were starting wasn't beginning with us. It was beginning with an extra chair already placed in the room. And for the first time since our wedding day, I felt strangely watched. I didn't know it then, but that conversation wasn't a discussion. It was an announcement. And 2 days later, the house received its real owner. 2 days after that conversation, I came home from work and noticed something strange. The house felt rearranged. Not dirty, not messy, just different. Like someone had walked through it and gently reminded the walls who was in charge. The cushions I had placed carefully on the couch were gone. The curtains were tied back in a way I didn't remember doing. Even the air smelled different, stronger, heavier, like boiled herbs and authority. Then I heard her voice, Daniel's mother. She was in the kitchen, humming softly, stirring a pot like she'd always belonged there. Her wrapper was tied tightly around her waist, her shoulders squared, her movements confident. This was not the posture of a visitor. This was the posture of someone who had resumed duty. "Oh, you are back," she said when she saw me, smiling politely, but without surprise. "Traffic must have been bad." I nodded slowly. Apparently, traffic was the least of my problems. Daniel appeared behind her, suddenly very busy with his phone. He didn't introduce us. He didn't ask if I was okay. He just stood there, quietly relieved, like someone who had finally completed a difficult delivery. That was my first lesson. She didn't arrive like a guest. She arrived like a replacement. That first evening, she insisted on cooking. I offered to help. She waved me off gently. "Rest," she said. "You're a new wife. There's time." I smiled, grateful. Foolish, but grateful. Dinner was quiet. She asked Daniel about work, his health, his stress. She didn't ask me anything personal, just polite questions, the kind that don't invite real answers. After dinner, she stood up and began clearing the table. "No, Mama, I'll do it," I said quickly. She paused, looked at me, and smiled again. "I've got it." Something about the way she said it made my chest tighten. It wasn't rude, it wasn't aggressive, it was final. That night, she took the spare room. By morning, it was no longer spare. I woke up to the sound of sweeping. Not careless sweeping, deliberate sweeping, the kind that announces productivity. When I walked into the living room, she was already seated, counting something in a small notebook. "Good morning," I said. "Morning," she replied, still writing. "Daniel leaves early now. I told him I would help him organize his week." She told him. Not we discussed, not we agreed. She told him. By the third day, she knew where everything was. By the fourth day, she had opinions. By the fifth day, she had routines. What time we should wake up, what food was healthy for a man, how much money was reasonable to spend in a week. She didn't shout, she didn't insult, she corrected. And somehow, corrections feel worse because they sound like care. One afternoon, I reached for the remote and she laughed softly. She said. "Daniel likes the news at this time." Daniel wasn't even in the room. I looked at him, he avoided my eyes. That was when it hit me. I wasn't competing with another woman. I was competing with a system. By the end of the week, I noticed something else. Daniel had gone quiet. Not angry, not sad, just absent. He moved around the house like a man who had returned to a familiar script. Let Mama speak, let Mama decide, let Mama handle it. One evening, I asked him quietly in the bedroom, "Are you okay with all this?" He sighed. "She's just trying to help." Help. That word again. I lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to her footsteps move confidently around the house. And for the first time, a thought crossed my mind that scared me. What if this marriage wasn't collapsing? What if it was being carefully reorganized, with me slowly moved to the edges? I didn't panic yet. I told myself it was temporary, that every adjustment period is awkward. I didn't know then that someone else was already guarding the throne. I met Daniel's sister properly on a Saturday morning. She didn't knock. She announced herself with the gate. The sound of metal scraping metal echoed through the compound, followed by her voice, loud and confident, calling Daniel's name like she had paid rent in the house. She walked in smiling, not the warm kind of smile, but the kind that scans first and greets later. "Oh, so this is the famous house," she said, dropping her bag on the couch I had carefully chosen. "Nice." She turned to me. "You must be Ada?" I nodded. "Yes." She laughed lightly. "Relax, I know who you are. I'm Sola." She didn't wait for introductions. She didn't need them. Mama was already behind her, beaming like a proud general welcoming her lieutenant. From that moment, the house felt crowded. Sola had opinions about everything. The food was too spicy. The living room was too quiet. The music I played while cleaning was not family music. She spoke like someone correcting a junior colleague. One afternoon, as I arranged plates on the table, she leaned against the counter and said casually, "You know, Daniel has always been a family man." I smiled politely. "He's very close to us," she continued. "Very. We don't joke with family around here." There it was. Not a warning, a boundary. Mama nodded approvingly. I started to notice how they moved together. The small glances, the shared looks, the unspoken understanding. They discussed things over my head in my presence, like I was background music. When Daniel entered the room, they both turned to him. "Sit," Mama would say. "Have you eaten?" Sola would ask. "Did she remind you to take your vitamins?" Mama added. I watched my husband shrink in real time. That night, I tried to laugh it off with him. "She has a lot of energy," I said gently. He smiled faintly. "She's just protective." Protective, another word that sounded harmless until you felt it pressing on your chest. By Sunday evening, Sola had settled in comfortably, too comfortably. She picked up my phone charger without asking. She flipped through channels like she owned the TV. She corrected the way I spoke to Daniel. "Don't talk to him like that," she said once, laughing. "He's not your mate." I stared at her. She laughed harder. "I'm joking." Everyone laughed, except me. Later that night, Mama called Daniel into her room. Sola followed. The door closed. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to their muffled voices, feeling something shift inside me. This wasn't a family. This was a council, and I wasn't invited. The next morning, Mama announced breakfast plans without looking at me. "Sola likes her eggs soft," she said. "Daniel doesn't eat bread on Mondays." I opened my mouth to speak, then closed it. Something in me hesitated. Not fear, awareness. That was when I realized the unspoken rule of the house. I could live here, but I could not lead here. By midday, Sola turned to me and said lightly, "You are lucky, you know. Many women marry into families like this and don't last." I forced a smile. "Lucky," I repeated. But deep down, a quiet voice whispered something else. This wasn't luck. This was a test. I didn't know how soon that test would come. All I knew was this. When it did, I expected my husband to stand with me. I was wrong. The first real fight didn't start with shouting. It started with breakfast. Mama had already set the table when I walked into the kitchen. 3 plates, 3 cups. No extra space. Everything placed with intention. "Daniel doesn't like his tea too hot," she said without looking at me. "And Sola takes hers with milk." I nodded slowly. I poured the tea exactly the way I had been told. Daniel sat down, quiet as usual. Sola was already scrolling through her phone, legs crossed comfortably. Mama watched us all like a referee who already knew the outcome. As I set Daniel's cup in front of him, Sola frowned. She said lightly. "You forgot the sugar." I blinked. "He doesn't usually take sugar." She smiled. "He does." Mama nodded. "He does." Daniel didn't say a word. That was the moment something snapped. Not loudly, but sharply, like a thin thread finally giving way. "I'll add it," I said, reaching for the sugar. "No," Mama said calmly. "Sit. I'll do it." She stood up, added the sugar herself, stirred it slowly, then placed the cup back in front of Daniel, like she had just corrected a mistake on an exam paper. Daniel smiled faintly. "Thanks, Mama." I stared at him. Later that afternoon, I pulled him aside in the bedroom. "Can we talk?" I asked. He sighed. About what? About everything I wanted to say, but instead, I chose my words carefully. I feel like I don't have a voice in this house anymore. He rubbed his face. You are overthinking. No, I said softly. I'm feeling. He looked away. They are just trying to help. You don't need to take everything personally. Personally. As if this was a hobby I had picked up. Before I could respond, raised voices came from the living room. Sola, imagine telling Mama she shouldn't move freely in her own son's house, she said loudly. My chest tightened. I walked out just in time to hear her turn toward me. So it's true, she said loudly. You don't want Mama here. That's not what I said, I replied, trying to stay calm. You are lying, she snapped. You came into this family and immediately started causing problems. Sola, please, Daniel said weakly. She ignored him. You think because you married him, you can now rearrange everything? Don't forget, he's our brother first. Something inside me flared. I'm his wife, I said quietly. The room went silent. Then she laughed. Wife? She repeated. It's been 1 week. Before I could react, she stepped closer, her voice sharp now. Know your place. That was when I pushed her hand away. She pushed me back, harder. The room erupted. Mama, she shouted. Mama rushed in. What is it? She touched me, Sola cried. I opened my mouth to speak. Daniel didn't wait. Ada, he snapped. What is wrong with you? I froze. I was defending myself, I said. You're always defensive, he replied coldly. You should have calmed her down. Calmed her down. I looked at him, really looked, and for the first time since our wedding, I didn't recognize the man in front of me. He wasn't standing beside me. He was standing against me. That night, we slept on the same bed, but miles apart. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying the scene over and over. Not the fight, not the shouting. His voice, the way he said my name, sharp, disappointed, final. That was when the truth settled in. This marriage wasn't missing love. It was missing loyalty. I didn't cry that night. I did something worse. I went quiet. And silence, I would soon learn, was exactly what they wanted. After that night, I stopped talking, not because I had nothing to say, but because I had learned something important. In that house, words were currency, and I was officially broke. So I moved differently. I woke up early, I cooked quietly, I cleaned without complaint. Not submission, survival. Mama seemed pleased. She's adjusting, she told Daniel one morning, nodding approvingly as I served breakfast. Adjusting, like furniture. Every Monday, Mama introduced a new routine. She would sit at the dining table with her small notebook, glasses perched on her nose, and say calmly, Daniel, this week, 50,000 should be enough. Enough for what? She never specified. Daniel nodded, reached for his wallet, and handed her the money. Then she turned to me. You go to the market, she said. Write everything down. I'll check the balance when you return. I blinked. Okay, I said. That was my life now. Not budgeting together. Not planning as a couple. Receiving instructions. Sometimes I wanted to laugh at how quickly things had changed. 6 months ago, I was discussing investment plans with this same man. Now I was reporting market expenses like an intern. If the soup was too salty, Mama would sigh and say, Sola, taste this. Sola would taste it and nod. Yes, it's too much. Daniel would continue eating silently. If the house felt too quiet, Sola complained I was moody. If I smiled too much, Mama asked what I was hiding. I couldn't win, but I could comply. And compliance is dangerous because it looks like peace. One evening, as I washed the dishes, I caught my reflection in the window. I barely recognized myself. My shoulders were tense, my eyes dull, my laughter gone. I realized something frightening then. No one had asked how I was doing in weeks. Not once. Not even Daniel. I had become useful, not visible. That night, as I lay in bed beside my husband, I whispered, "Are you happy?" He didn't open his eyes. "Can we not do this now?" he said. I turned my face to the wall. The next morning, Mama announced, "Pregnancy is not sickness." I hadn't even told them yet. She knew. She always knew. And suddenly, the quiet wasn't just silence anymore. It was suffocation. I thought pregnancy would soften things. I thought it would protect me. I was wrong. When I found out I was pregnant, I cried. Not the loud, celebratory kind of crying people post online, but quiet tears. The kind that come from hope. I told myself, maybe now things will change. Maybe this would soften Daniel. Maybe it would remind everyone that I wasn't just a background character in this house. I was carrying life. Mama's reaction was practical. "A boy or a girl, God will decide," she said. "But don't start relaxing. Women in my time farmed until delivery." I nodded. Of course they did. From that day, the workload increased. Market runs became longer. Cooking became heavier. Rest became suspicious. If I sat down too long, Mama cleared her throat. "If you are tired now, what will you do when the baby comes?" Sola watched me carefully, like someone monitoring performance. One afternoon, I asked Daniel softly, "Can you help with the market tomorrow? The baskets are heavy." He hesitated. "Mama said exercise is good for you." Exercise. I wanted to scream. I'm growing a human being, not training for a marathon. But I smiled, because smiling was easier than explaining. By my second trimester, my feet were constantly swollen. My back ached. Sleep came in short, restless pieces. Yet every morning, I woke before dawn, swept, cooked, served tea, light milk, 2 cubes of sugar, Mama's exact preference. One evening, I dared to lie down in the afternoon. Mama walked past my room, paused, and said casually, "Pregnancy is not sickness, my dear." I stared at the ceiling, counting breaths. That sentence followed me everywhere. When my body hurt, when my baby kicked hard at night, when I felt invisible. Daniel noticed my silence but mistook it for maturity. "She's becoming responsible," he told his mother once. Responsible for everyone except myself. The day I gave birth, Mama ululated loudly. "A son," she shouted. "The family name continues." For the first time in months, I felt proud. For a brief moment, I was celebrated. But celebration has an expiration date. 2 weeks after childbirth, I asked carefully, "Can my mother come help for a while?" Daniel nodded absent-mindedly. "That's fine." I felt relief until Mama heard. She stormed into the room like a gathering cloud. "Over my dead body," she said. The baby cried in my arms. "This house is too small," she continued. "What will your mother come and do that I'm not already doing?" I swallowed hard. "I just need help," I said quietly. "Just for a few weeks." Mama's eyes hardened. "She will come and poison your mind. Don't forget who made you who you are." That night, as I fed my baby in the dark, tears fell silently onto his tiny blanket. Daniel lay beside me, pretending to sleep. That was the night something inside me began to harden. Not anger, resolve. The next day, a stranger told me the truth. Not my husband, not my mother-in-law. A woman at a hair salon. And her words changed everything. The day I finally spoke to someone outside that house, it wasn't planned. I had gone to the market under the hot sun, my baby strapped tightly to my back, sweat running down places I didn't know could sweat. By the time I finished buying tomatoes, pepper, and vegetables, I barely had the strength to walk home. So I stopped, not to shop, not to rest long, just to breathe. There was a small salon near the junction, nothing fancy. Plastic chairs, a mirror with a crack running through it, and the smell of hair cream mixed with dust. "Sit down," the stylist said when she saw me. "You look like someone chasing tomorrow." I laughed weakly and sat. She studied me for a moment in the mirror. "You're not sick," she said, "but you're not okay." I wanted to deny it. Instead, everything spilled out. I told her about the house, the control, the silence, how I cooked, cleaned, obeyed, and still felt invisible. How my husband watched everything and said nothing. How I felt like a helper in my own marriage. When I finished talking, my chest felt lighter, like I had finally exhaled after holding my breath for months. The stylist didn't rush to comfort me. She just looked at me quietly, then said something that cut straight through all my confusion. "You are living like a visitor in your own life." I swallowed. "You are a wife," she continued, "not a servant. And if you don't stand up now, one day you will wake up and not recognize the woman in the mirror." I laughed again, but this time it wasn't funny. "How?" I asked. "If I talk, I'm rude. If I keep quiet, I'm still wrong." She shrugged. "Then stop trying to be right for people who will never be satisfied." That sentence followed me all the way home. That night, as I lay beside my sleeping baby, the words replayed in my head again and again. "You're a wife, not a servant." For the first time in months, I didn't feel scared. I felt clear. The next morning, I made a phone call. I didn't tell Daniel. I didn't tell Mama. I called my mother. "Mama," I said, quietly, "please come. I need you." She didn't ask questions. "I'll take the first bus," she replied. That was the moment I stopped waiting for permission. I thought bringing my mother would cause trouble. I didn't know it would change the balance of power completely. The afternoon my mother arrived, the house was unusually quiet. I heard the taxi stop outside, and my heart jumped so hard it felt like it might escape my chest. I rushed to the window, and there she was, standing by the gate with her small travel bag, wrapper tied firmly, eyes tired but alert. When I opened the door, I didn't greet her. I ran into her arms. For the first time in months, I cried properly. Not silently, not politely. I cried like a child who had finally found safety. "My daughter," she whispered, holding me tightly. "What happened to you?" "I'm tired," I said. She nodded like she already knew. "I'm here now." That sentence alone felt like medicine. She went straight to the baby, lifting him gently, murmuring prayers under her breath. No drama, no inspection, just presence. When Daniel returned home that evening, he froze. "Mama, when did you come?" he asked, confused. "This afternoon," my mother replied calmly. "She needs help." He scratched his head awkwardly. "Oh, okay, you should have told me." I smiled faintly. Before I could respond, Mama walked out of her room tying her wrapper. She stopped when she saw my mother. The air shifted. "Ah," she said, forcing a smile. "Welcome." "Thank you," my mother replied. "My daughter called me." Mama's smile tightened. "Well," she said slowly, "the house is small." "I'll manage," my mother replied. Mothers always do. I bit my lip to stop myself from smiling. That night, Mama pulled Daniel aside. I didn't need to be close to hear her whisper. This shade entered her voice like vinegar. "She cannot stay long," Mama said. "This house is not a market." Daniel mumbled something. The next morning, Mama barely spoke to me. Instead, she watched. My mother, on the other hand, moved freely. She helped with the baby, cooked when she wanted, rested when she needed to. No explanations, no apologies. That alone was disruptive. One afternoon, Mama complained loudly. "This noise is too much." My mother looked up calmly. "Babies cry," she said. "They don't ask permission." Silence followed. For the first time since I married, someone spoke back without shaking. That night, Mama whispered again to Daniel. "You must talk to her," she said. "Tell her to leave before she brings confusion into this house, like the other woman." The name hit me like a slap. I stepped into the living room before Daniel could answer. "Over my dead body," I said. They both turned to stare at me. "My mother is staying," I continued, my voice steady. "And just so you know, my younger sister is coming tomorrow." Mama's mouth fell open. Daniel looked stunned. The house had never been this quiet, and for the first time in a long time, I felt tall. The next day, my sister arrived, and that's when the house finally exploded. My sister arrived the next afternoon. She walked in smiling, dropped her bag by the door, looked around the living room, and said casually, "So, this is where all the tension lives?" I laughed. It was the first real laugh I'd had in weeks. She hugged me tightly, kissed the baby, and greeted everyone politely. Mama responded with a tight nod. Daniel barely spoke. The air felt charged, like the house itself was waiting. For the rest of the day, Mama stayed in her room, too quiet. By evening, the storm arrived. The front door flew open and Sola walked in, eyes blazing. "So it's true," she snapped, looking around. "You've brought your entire family here." I stood up slowly. "My mother came to help me," I said. "That's all." She laughed bitterly. "Help you or help you scatter the family?" Before I could answer, she turned to my mother. "And you," she said sharply, "you think you can just come here and take over?" My mother remained calm. "Watch your tone," she said. "You're speaking to your elder." That was when it happened. Sola slapped me. The sound echoed through the house. For a split second, everything froze. Then something inside me snapped cleanly in half. I turned and slapped her back. Left, right, she staggered. Before anyone could react, my sister moved fast, grabbed Sola by the hair and dragged her toward the door. "You will not beat my sister in her own house," she said coldly. They pushed her outside. She landed on the ground shouting threats. Mama screamed. Daniel shouted. The baby cried. But inside me, peace. For the first time, I didn't feel guilty. I felt free. After that day, nothing returned to normal because normal had been broken. Sola stopped visiting. When she tried, I made the house unbearable. Loud music, short answers, silence where it hurt. Mama, however, stayed, simmering. Every day became a battlefield. Complaints about noise, about food, about how my sister dressed. But I no longer apologized. Daniel started changing. He left early, came back late, stayed quiet. One night he exploded. "I can't take this anymore," he shouted. "My house is chaos." I looked at him calmly. "Now you understand," I said. He stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time. The next morning, he packed a bag and left. Weeks passed. The house became peaceful. We laughed, we cooked together, we shared baby duties. Mama watched us from a distance, uncomfortable, powerless. Then one morning, she packed her bags and left without a word. I stood at the window and watched her go. My heart didn't race. It didn't ache. It was steady. When Daniel returned, the house felt different. And for the first time, he noticed. Daniel came back on a Thursday evening. No announcement, no drama, just the sound of keys at the door. I was in the kitchen feeding the baby when he walked in. He dropped his bag, looked around, and frowned. Not because something was wrong, but because something was missing. There was no shouting, no complaints, no whispered meetings behind closed doors. The house was calm. He stood there for a long time, like someone who had returned to a place he thought he knew, only to realize it had changed shape. That night, he ate dinner quietly and sat on the couch long after everyone had gone to bed. The TV was on, but he wasn't watching it. His eyes stayed fixed on nothing. By the third day, he started hovering, standing in doorways, pausing mid-step, listening. I noticed it, but didn't comment. On the fourth day, he finally spoke. "This house feels different," he said quietly. I turned to look at him. No one is fighting, no one is reporting anyone. The air feels light. I said nothing. He said, "I didn't realize how much noise we were living with," he admitted. I thought it was normal. Normal. That word again. He rubbed his hands together nervously. I used to think my family was helping, that they meant well, but now I see it. He finally looked at me then, really looked. "I'm sorry," he said, "for not protecting you, for watching everything happen and doing nothing." The apology hung in the air, fragile and untested. "I failed you," he added, "and I failed our home." I felt something loosen in my chest. Not forgiveness, understanding. "I didn't want anyone else leaving this house," he continued. "Not my mother, not my sister, not you." I nodded slowly. "I just wanted a partner," I said. He swallowed hard. That night we talked, really talked, about fear, about boundaries, about how love can disappear when silence replaces courage. By Sunday evening, we made a decision. We would leave. Not in anger, not in shame, but in clarity. A fresh place, fresh rules, no permanent family residence. Visits were welcome. Control was not. When we moved into our new apartment, it felt lighter. Smaller, yes, but free. Just the three of us. For the first time since I said I do, I felt like I was finally home. What surprised me most wasn't that he apologized. It was that he finally understood. And that changed everything. The new apartment didn't fix us overnight. Peace gives you space, but space also forces you to look at what you've been avoiding. For the first few weeks, Daniel was careful, almost too careful. He asked before inviting anyone over. He checked in before making decisions. He listened more than he spoke. At first, I wondered if it was guilt. Then I realized it was fear. Fear of losing us for good. One evening, as we sat on the floor folding baby clothes, he stopped suddenly. "I need to say something," he said. I waited. "When you brought your mother into the house," he continued, "I was angry, not because of the chaos, but because you broke a rule I never admitted existed." I looked at him. He had grown up believing my mother came first, he said, quietly. Not out of love, but out of obligation. And I carried that into our marriage without questioning it. He exhaled slowly. "I didn't see you as a partner. I saw you as someone who needed to fit into an already written script." That honesty hit harder than any apology. "I'm sorry," he said again. "Not just for what happened, but for who I allowed myself to be." I didn't rush to respond. Because apologies that matter don't beg for forgiveness. They wait. Weeks later, Mama called. I watched his face as he answered. "Yes, Mama," he said calmly. "No, you can't come and stay. You can visit, but we have our own home now." I held my breath. She shouted. She cried. She accused. Daniel listened. Then he said something that changed everything. "This is my family," he said, "and I will protect it." He hung up. I didn't clap. I didn't celebrate. I just nodded. That night, he turned to me and said, "Thank you for not leaving when you had every reason to." I shook my head. "I didn't stay because of hope," I said. "I stayed because I found my voice." He smiled, not proudly, but humbly. And that was enough. I didn't win by fighting harder. I won by refusing to disappear. When people hear my story now, they usually ask the same question. Why didn't you leave? Or the opposite, why didn't you fight harder? The truth is, I did neither. I stayed, but I stopped shrinking. That was the real battle. For a long time, I thought strength meant endurance, smiling through discomfort, keeping peace at all costs, proving that I could handle whatever was placed on my shoulders. But endurance without dignity isn't strength, it's erosion. What almost destroyed my marriage wasn't my mother-in-law. It wasn't my sister-in-law. It wasn't even my husband's silence. It was the slow way I was disappearing from my own life. When I found my voice, everything shifted. Not overnight, not magically, but steadily. Boundaries replaced apologies. Conversation replaced silence. Respect replaced fear. Mama never forgave me. She stopped calling. She avoided me when we crossed paths. And strangely, that didn't hurt the way I thought it would. Because peace doesn't always come with approval. Daniel and I are still learning, still unlearning, still choosing each other every day. Not out of obligation, but intention. Our home is quieter now. Not empty, not cold, just honest. Sometimes I watch my son sleeping and I promise myself something silently, that he will never grow up believing love means losing yourself, that family will never mean control, that partnership will never mean silence. I didn't win because I fought harder. I won because I stopped disappearing. And that, for me, was enough. Thank you so much for watching. If this story resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you think Ada made the right decision? Would you have handled it differently? Share your perspective in the comments. Let's have an honest conversation. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next story. I'll see you in the next one.